Do-do-do. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. That guy slides into the chair. Hey, what's up? I love this 120-year-old chalkboard. I got 5 computers, and yet I make videos with like a chalkboard from Little House on the Prairie. Yeah. By the way, I actually have a fascinating equation, which is my discovery tattooed right here on the inside of my right wrist. My discovery, it's 1 over 5 to the power of -3, which someone would superficially, like a mathematician, would say, well, that's a number, that's 4.23606, which of course is 5 cubed. It's like, well, no, it's an expression. Anytime, you put a number over another in representation of division, we're talking about an expression, okay? Something is subdivided or is self-subdivided by something else. See, that's how superficial minds think as well. 1 over 5 to the power of -3, well, that's a number, 4.2. It's like, yeah, but how did you arrive at that number? There's actual expression there. I like to simplify things. I always have loved to simplify things because human beings, in their massive ignorance and insanity, love to complicate things. And just as I've said, and which is factual and 100% undeniable, not a single person has ever even attempted to deny it, is that there's only ever been 2 postulates for the basis of cosmic mechanics. One is based on the ether, and the other one's based on atomism. There's never, ever been forwarded anything by anybody other than those 2. Likewise, respect when it comes to causation, and human beings when it comes, and I'm not interested in religion. I only do metaphysics, not religion. Religion is secularized metaphysics. Human beings when it comes to causation, or to like prima causa, or sometimes someone will superficially say original sin, or first sin. It goes by a lot of different names. The ancient Greeks referred to it in several different fashions depending on context. They referred to it as the euristos daias. They referred to it as tolma. They also, too, referred to it as ananke. There's only ever been 3 postulates for causation, yeah? And one of them has no causation at all. It's not causation at all. But there's only ever been 3 postulates because people ultimately ask the big question, as human beings or ought to do, is that why is there anything at all rather than nothing? And then, of course, that's the basis for another discussion, because human beings always confuse nothing with no thing, because nothing is one principle, but no thing meaning non-Cartesian, not manifest, counter space, the ether, spirit, so on and so forth, that's something else. Human beings love to confuse those 2. But anyway, there's only ever been 3 postulates. One is completely nihilistic, meaning that for some unknown reason that they never explain, like true metaphysical atheism, we actually have nihil ex nihilo, or true nihilism. Nihil ex nihilo means from naught comes naught. In other words, there was this grand miracle, nothing that had nothing to do with deities or anything. It's just all of a sudden there was nothing, and then the next instant there was something. But then, of course, something. Of course, we actually have to discuss energy, and they never will, nor can they, nor have they ever defined the word energy. So there's that first postulate of nihilistic first causes, of course, which is completely ludicrous. Metaphysical atheists love to attack creationists and religion in general. They say, well, it's completely illogical. And they are accurate at pointing out the countless logical inconsistencies and nonsense of most and any all religious systems, but they themselves can't see the log in their own eye, where they'll actually postulate spontaneous manifestation from nothing. There was absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden there was everything. Just because then we don't actually have to talk about God or gods or spirits or anything. That you'll say, well, we can ignore those the big G words and all that other stuff when talking to metaphysical atheists and say, well, now we're talking about energy. So yes, exactly right. So, well, you could never define energy, nor could you ever rationalize something as hyperbolic and radically insane as spontaneous either release of energy or manifestation of energy. Well, that's the great miracle we can't explain. They themselves must conjure up this super miracle. I mean, a greater miracle than anything that they themselves are so fond of attacking. And then the second one, like I said, we have nihilism, metaphysical atheism, specifically it is known. The second one is that of creationism, where we actually have, an old dude sitting up in the clouds, and, there was like some sort of original sin, or as they would say in Latin, prima causa, the apple, the knowledge of good and evil, and all sorts of fairy tale silliness, which of course is radical, but nowhere near as radical as spontaneous manifestation, or nihil ex nihilo, vis-a-vis the nihilists. So we have the nihilists, and then we have the creationists, but there's a third one. And none of us learned this in high school or college, and should have. And it's the premise of, by the way, of Advaita Vedanta. It's the premise of original Buddhism. It's the premise of the Egyptians. If you get past a lot of their mysticism and their anthropomorphic metaphysical symbolic representations. And then we actually have the same in the Greeks, vis-a-vis Pythagoras, Plato, even Aristotle, even though Aristotle focused a lot on the empirical things, and Neoplatonists, Proclus, Numenius, Syrianus, Albanus, Damasius, Iamblichus, on and on and on. And here, by the way, I brought these two books out. This book is about one word only. It's about the word ananke. Yeah? And it's translated as necessity, but it doesn't really mean that. And in its broader context, it's kind of like how you translate the word nous. Nous, the ancient Greek word nous, is untranslatable. Depending on the context, it could mean the Pali, the word nous in Pali is chitta, by the way. Anytime I hear a nous, I immediately ideate ancient Pali. The word chitta, or the spiritus sanctum, or the logos. There's another great Greek word. There's so many, and also too in Pali. There's all these words that are completely untranslatable. The most important one is the word samma, which is completely untranslatable. And I wrote a book about that. But anyway, this is all about Ananke. It's represented as a goddess. It is very, very crudely translated as necessity. And but even though this book is like 280 pages, it never actually defines Ananke, even though it has countless citations in it. And also a word in the same ilk is the word tolma. And this is also used in conjunction with the euristos dias and as the term in reference to causation. And Mr. Torchia, who wrote this book, and this book is like, 160 some pages long, 170 pages long. He tons and tons of citations. He's got virtually every citation of the word tolma in here, but he never tells you what it is. This book is infuriating. It's good that he actually brings up all the references. Let me read a passage from Eunice. The nous voluntarism. And of course this is all about first causes. The paradox lies in the fact that the one, or the agathon, is the source of the movement, which itself does not possess tolma, assumes propositions, a metaphysical principle in its own right. In other words, it takes on a principle concordant and alongside or parallel that of the agathon or the absolute. And he calls it a secondary principle. It's not a secondary principle, it's literally the attribute of the absolute. Because there's nothing in this universe, seen or unseen, simplex or complex, that doesn't have at least one attribute. Nothing is, nor can be known by, without at least one attribute. Tolma refers, of course, to the euristos dias, or the extrinsic attribute of the absolute, kind of like light and illumination. Now we think light is one thing and illumination is another, and of course even the term light itself is conceptual, but that's a matter for another discussion. But light and illumination are just distinctions without a difference. We're actually talking what something is, in principle, and what something does, kind of like water and wetness, although that's kind of a crude analogy. But of these three systems, there have only ever been one logical supposition about the nature of first causation. You agree with me on this or not? I'm not debating religion or what people believe. I don't care about belief systems. I don't want you to take it the wrong way, but I don't care what anybody believes in. I only care what's logical, wise, and tenable, versus what is completely untenable, like nihil ex nihilo, spontaneous manifestation of nothing without any explanations. Like, there was nothing, and all of a sudden, there was everything. And that's the position of metaphysical atheism. or true materialism. And by the way, all PhD academics of physics take this position. Well, first there was nothing, and then there was a Big Bang. The Big Bang never happened, by the way. There was nothing, and then all of a sudden there was something. It's like, oh, we were talking about energy, because we can leave God out of the picture. We don't have to talk about God or no God. In debating these people, because these people are only used to butting heads with creation, it's like, well, you know, your religious nonsense is completely ridiculous. And this is exactly what they say and think and feel and believe, which is okay. It's like, well, okay. But now let's take a look, because you can't see the log in your own eye, Mr. Materialist. You have nothing, and then all of a sudden, everything. Yes, he's exactly right. It's a Big Bang. Oh, is it, we're talking about massive amounts of energy here. Energia. Let's just say it. We don't need to use the word Greek. We don't have to use ancient terms for energy or energia. See, it's exactly right. He's exactly right. Big Bang. As of energy. Oh, where'd the energy come from? Well, I know. I thought, what about the law of conservation of energy? Because these people, well, I'm a scientist. There's a Big Bang. What about the law of conservation of energy? So we're talking about spontaneous manifestation, release and manifestation of energy where there was none to begin with in any way, shape, or form, be it spatial, counterspatial, manifest, or unmanifest. That's exactly right. Nothing, absolutely nothing at the beginning, before time. And that's, you know, that's completely ridiculous. See, they'll point out the splinter in someone else's eye, you know, the craziness of belief systems. I believe, do you believe? Like, I believe. But they themselves can't see the insanity of their own position. Now, if we take and we reject these two positions, and I don't care what you believe, you're upset about me saying, we reject these two things, one of, you know, one of beliefs in religion, and the other one of nihilistic materialism, where they can never define the word energy, they can't tell you where it came from, they contradict themselves and break the law of conservation of energy in the biggest fashion imaginable. It was just, it's like, where did the energy come from that manifested all this? So, well, that's the miracle we can't explain. So, you're attacking the creationists for craziness, but you yourself postulate something infinitely more crazy. They're not used to that. You see, there's only 99.99%. There's only these two entities, the creationists and the folks of belief systems and these nihilistic materialists butting heads, pointing out the illogical nonsense of one another. There's something completely separate from that. Nobody makes videos about this on YouTube, and I love making videos about stuff that is both important and not mentioned or talked about anywhere on YouTube. That third system is the system of the Pythagoreans, of the Advaita Vedanta, of original Buddhism, which I'm not going to talk about Buddhism today, of the Neoplatonists, Proclus, Numenius, Syrianus, Iamblichus, Damasius. My favorite, by the way, is Plotinus, Damasius, and Syrianus, not that anybody cares. That's the principle of monism, where we actually have the extrinsic attribute. See, the terms are so obscure that there's two books written about two words. This book is all about one word, tolma, and it never tells you what it is, and the author admits, he's like, I don't know what it is. I gave you every reference for tolma, but, you know, it kind of is like this, and it's kind of like that, but I don't really know what it is. This is what academicians are good for. Almost nothing. And this book, very well written, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of citations, 300 pages long, all about one word. This book is all about one word and defining it. Gives you all the context, all the occurrences, which is good because he already found all the occurrences in various books by various authors, but he still doesn't know what it is. Translated as necessity, sometimes represented as a goddess. What it means in true metaphysical, foundational lucidity of understanding is that it can't exist any other way. It's and necessity is kind of a crude word to refer to it, but it's in reference to the extrinsic attribute of the absolute, or the agathon, just kind of like light and illumination. This is the reason why the first two numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. Let me repeat that because it's so important. First two numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. It goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, so on and so forth. 1 and 1. Yeah. And by the way, the Greeks did not think of 1 as a number. They thought of 1 as a principle. But the first two digits are 1 and 1. Yeah. Principle and attribute. Extrinsic attribute of the absolute. The secret of the Pythagoreans is found by me in Plato's Republic 509d to 511. It's called the divided line section. There's a reason why I have that equation tattooed on the inside of my right wrist, 1 over 5 to the power of negative 3. That's the expression of the division, not actual division, but principle and attribute, and it would take hours to discuss this. The division and the expression of 1 over its attribute. 1 over its attribute, and that attribute is 0.23606, or 5 to the power of negative 3, equals 4.23606, which, by the way, is phi cubed. 1 over 5 to the power of negative 3 equals phi cubed, by the way. That's the actual expression found in Plato's Republic 509d to 511 on the divided line. And we actually have right over here, I'll show you phi cubed equals 1 over 5 to the power of negative 3, which also equals 1 over 0.23606. Anyway, in Plato's Republic 509d to 511, we actually take a line, look up passage Plato's Republic. We take a line, we divide that line unevenly, and then we take each one of those sections. I actually should have started here. Take each one of those sections, excuse me. There we go. We divide it unevenly. We take each one of those sections and divide it unevenly again. And what you'll end up with invariably is phi, 1, 1, 1 over phi. And then we have, of course, two subdivisions, which are the cosmos noitos and the cosmos lethitos. Over here, cosmos lethitos basically is the material world, which is over here, which is 1.618, and over here we actually have 2.618, the totality of which of all these four sections is phi to the power of negative 3. You want to talk about Pythagorean secrets? This is the Pythagorean secret of incommensurability. Phi to the power of 3, or 4.23606. But you take a single line, you divide it unevenly, then you take each one of those remaining sections and you divide it unevenly again, and you'll end up with phi, 1, 1, and 1 over phi. Which, by the way, the only geometry in the entire universe which has that incommensurable geometry, I hope I can actually draw it here free-handed pretty good, is the Pythagorean triangle, the 108, 36, 36 triangle of the Pythagoreans, which has a base of phi and two slopes of 1 over phi to the power of negative 3. Here we go. And if you actually take this triangle in triplicate, that is the Pythagorean pentagram, and you actually go from apex to base in the incommensurable cut, we end up with the mirror image also too of phi, 1, and 1 right here. And that is the incommensurable cut, where this becomes now 1, and this now becomes phi. And that's the only perfect incommensurable geometry in the entire universe. And that's the reason why this triangle in triplicate makes up the Pythagorean pentagram. It's also the exact geometry. You can see it mirrored here on my hand, the back of my hand, although it's upside down, of course. Don't like that. That's also to the geometry of water. Let me actually erase some sections here. Right here. We don't want to do that. There we go. And we have over here hydrogen atom, and up here oxygen. Okay? And this is the dipole antenna of life. Yeah? A dipole, I don't know if you know what a dipole antenna geometry is. But like here's the hang point, and it hangs down on both sides. It's a dipole antenna. And this is the incommensurate geometry that makes all life possible, without which life is impossible. Isn't it interesting that the water molecule, the basis for all life and consciousness, is also, too, the only incommensurable geometry and the secret of the Pythagoreans? The Pythagoreans only had one secret for which one person was killed, and that was the secret of incommensurability. And referring to Tolman, referring to Anankia, that is the incommensurability of the Pythagoreans. So if you ever want, it's not the tetractys. People say, well, that's the secret of the Pythagoreans, tetractys. It's a small one, and it's actually sub-reference to all of this, as well as Tolma and Ananke and the Aristos Dias. But no, I mean, that's the arithmos of the Pythagoreans. But the true secret of the Pythagoreans, not my opinion, but a fact, is the incommensurability of the Aristos Dias, Tolma, Ananke, and also, too, the uncaused cause, or extrinsic attribute of the absolute. Because 1 over phi, the power of negative 3, is not a number. Well, sure it is. 1 over phi power negative 3 is phi cubed, or 4.2360. Like that. Yeah, but it's an expression. It's the subdivision of the 1 against itself. It's the reason why the first two numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. It's also a reason why the only incommensurate geometry of the universe is the Pythagorean 108, 36, 36 triangle, which is also to the geometry of the water molecule, which makes all life possible, which is the dipole antenna of life and consciousness itself. Pretty sure, last I recall, that without water you don't have life. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. But here's academia for you. This whole book is about one word. Never concludes, like, you know, this is what this means. You know, I've done a lot of study on this one word. I finally figured out what it means. Never did it. Never did it. Another term in the same ilk, ananke, translated as necessity, but it doesn't really mean necessity. It literally means basically it can't be any other way. And that's a reference to Pythagorean monism. I don't know if you know what monism is. M-O-N-I-S-M. You can look it up. But that's the third echelon of three postulates for first causation that have ever been put forward throughout all of history. From ancient times until today. We've only ever had three. 99.99% of us only know about two. The metaphysical atheists or the materialists or the nihilists, they're one and the same thing. And then over here we got the belief systems. Apple was plucked from the tree and it was bit, and the old dude up in the sky said, "Be gone with you." Okay, whatever. Both of these postulates break with Occam's razor. They break with logic, common sense, logic, and wisdom. They are untenable. There's a great word everybody should learn. Use it more often, you'll impress people. Untenable. It's like, that, your position is untenable. Or that is untenable. I wish more people would use the word untenable. So only those two. And the third one is the only one that's actually, and I didn't mean to use my middle finger there, sorry about that. The third one is that of the monists, the Pythagoreans, the Platonists, and the Neoplatonists. Logical, follows Occam's razor, is completely tenable, it's logical, it's intelligent, it doesn't break with wisdom, common sense, and logic. It just does not. It falls directly in parallel in line with it. So, only ever been those three systems, and only one of them makes sense. Sure, well, someone's going to attack me for saying that. It doesn't just make sense, it explains everything in nature, from macro to micro, to life and otherwise. It explains everything. Well, that's what you believe. Well, I don't care what people believe. I don't even care what I believe. I care about what's logical, wise, and intelligent. I hope I kind of stuck this in a nutshell, which is really hard to do on such a huge topic like this, but I hope I accomplished it. Yeah, that chalk dust that gets my allergies going, man. Tattooed monkey don't like the chalk dust too much. Anyway, I hope you like this video, and Happy New Year. Goodbye.